Greetings, everyone. Once again, it's Brother Motamonidi sharing the authentic truth brought to us by Zulula 100. So here, the message I'm going to share is going to be: is the biblical timeline of Noah's Ark true? So, brothers and sisters, to all those who love the truth, who wants to know the truth, listen carefully to the message, because there's been a lot of lies, a lot of misunderstanding regarding the flood, regarding Noah's. Because many people will claim that Noah was saved he, his wife, his 3 sons, and his 3 daughters-in-law. And that many people will also claim that the ark stopped on Mount Ararat, which is in Turkey. And there's been false claim as well that no, some part of the ark was found in Turkey, in Mount Ararat, and so on. But we shall see, we shall dive into the current class of the Bible to see if that story holds up, if it is true. Because in Proverbs 19:2, you're told the lack of knowledge is not good for any spirit of man of the original race. And you can find that in Bibèl, the book of the truth, the only authentic Bible without any errors or contradiction. And here, this is the translation. And in Proverbs chapter 25, verse 2, you're told the manifestation of the glory of Loba is to hide things to the uninitiated, whites, and mixed blood. The glory of initiated kings is to probe the hidden things of the non-visible. And you're also told in the current Bibles in John chapter 8, verse 32, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So you have to understand that there's been many stories in the different civilization regarding the flood. And one of the most ancient known is the one of Gilgamesh in ancient Mesopotamia. There's also a story of the flood even in China, and according to Greek mythology as well. So there's about 13 stories regarding the flood in history and so on. But the flood really did happen, but not like the current Bibles will claim, that 8 people were saved and that the ark stopped on Mount Ararat. That is completely false. Because they try to falsify history to try to make it seems like that story happened somewhere else, when in fact that happened in Africa. Because when we go in the current Bibles, in Genesis chapter 6, verse 11, you're told, now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. Amplified Bible, the population of the earth was corrupt, absolutely depraved, spiritually and morally putrid in God's sight. And the land was filled with violence, desecration, infringement, outrage, assault, and lust of power. And so you have to understand that was in the period of hybridization, where the fallen angels came onto the earth to have relations with the daughters of man, so the black woman, some black woman. And they gave birth to the what is known as the white race. And the same fallen angel also came on earth and had relations with some animals, and that gave birth to what is known as the demons, which sometimes will be represented as semi-men, and so me-men, and semi-animals. and their actions, they were violence. You're told here, filled with violence, desecration, infringement, outrage, assault, lust of power. So it was a period of violence, of chaos, of sin. And in Genesis chapter 6, verse 12, you're told, God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupted their ways. New Living Translation, God observed all this corruption in the world, for everyone on earth was corrupt. And in Genesis chapter 6, verse 13, so God said to Noah, I am going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. And in Genesis chapter 6, verse 14, build a large boat from cypress wood and waterproof it with tar inside and out. period. So what is tar for your information? Tar is dark brown or black viscous liquid of hydrocarbons and free carbon obtained from a wide variety of organic materials through destructive distillation. Tar can be produced from coal, wood, petroleum, or peat. Also, in other version, in New International Version, you're told, so make yourself an ark of cypress wood, make room in it, and coat it with pitch inside and out. And pitch is any various artificial mixture resembling resinous or bituminous pitches. Pitch, a black or dark viscous substance obtained as a residue in the distillation of organic material and especially tar. Bituminous, any of various mixtures of hydrocarbon, are obtained as residue after heat, refining natural substances such as petroleum. So you have to understand here that at the time of Noah, they already knew regarding petroleum, regarding tar. So it's not something new. In ancestral Africa, they already knew the importance of oil, of petrol, of gas, of petroleum. And in Genesis chapter 7, verse 7, and Noah and his son and his wife, and Noah and his sons and his wife and his son's wife entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Genesis chapter 7, verse 11, New International Version. In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the second month, on that day all the spring of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgate of the heaven were open. Genesis chapter 7, verse 11. That's in another translation in Bibèl de Vie. It's not written regarding all the spring of the great deep burst forth, but all the source of the immense ocean, of the ocean, because it was one ocean. Because the notion of different oceans happened after. Genesis chapter 7, verse 23. You will see why it's very important to know these things. Genesis chapter 7, verse 23. And every living thing on the face of the earth was destroyed. Men and livestock, crawling creatures and birds of the air. They were blotted out from the earth, and only Noah and those with him in the ark remained. And you have to understand that that is completely false. Because Noah also had brothers and sisters. There were other people as well. You got to tell me that the brothers and sisters of Noah were also bad, also perished. Because even when you go in one of the book of the Secret of Enoch, you're told regarding the birth of Melchizedek, his miraculous birth. And in that version, you're told that there were also other people. So that Noah had brothers and sisters. In Hebrew chapter 7, verse 3, you're told in New Living Translation, because when the fake pastor will try to talk regarding Melchizedek, they'll claim that no, Melchizedek had no beginning. And they will claim that he has no genealogy. But in the New Living Translation, you're told there is no record of his father or mother or any of his ancestors. No beginning or end of his life. No record. So the person who has written no record, it's not because you don't have the record that those records don't exist. Or it's not because there's no record of it that it did not happen. That he did not have a mother. That's why in the secret book of Enoch, is mentioned regarding his mother, regarding his birth, regarding how it happened. You see? So those who write those type of texts are only victim of their lack of knowledge, of their lack of understanding, and their lack of knowledge of other scriptures, of other texts that mention the account of Melchizedek's birth. And you have to understand that Melchizedek was born before the flood, and he was also saved from the flood. So it wasn't only 8 people, because Melchizedek appeared after the flood, meaning he was born before the flood, but he appeared later after the flood. So that means he was saved from the flood. And like I've mentioned, Noah had also brothers and sisters. And in other versions regarding the flood, in one of the Sumerian texts, you're told that the artisan, so those who helped build the ark, were also saved. And when we go in Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, you're told the Nephilim were on earth in those days and also afterwards. So you're told here in Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, that the Nephilim were on earth in those days. In those days, which days? In the days before the flood, before the destruction happened, the Nephilim were there. And also afterwards, and also after the flood. But if everyone that wasn't on the ark perished, how then the Nephilim we are also found after the flood? Already you see a big confusion, a big contradiction. And when we go in Numbers chapter 13, verse 33, you're told regarding the Nephilim appearance that they are still on earth after the flood, because Numbers is way after. Numbers chapter 13, verse 33, Contemporary English Version. In fact, we saw the Nephilim, who are the ancestors of the Anakim. They were so big that we felt as small as grasshoppers. So those are the giants, also known as the Nephilim. So they were on earth. So how did they survive? How their descendants are found? Because this in Numbers 13, verse 33, this is in the time of the personage known as Joshua, who came after. His true name is Busi, but they will call him Moses. So you're told even after Moses, that there were Nephilim on earth, that there were Nephilims, there were giants. But supposedly all the giants should have perished during the flood, because only 8 people were saved, and only the animals that Noah took. So are you telling me that Noah took the Nephilim in the ark as well? That's not mentioned. You're told here, Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, the Nephilim were on earth in those days and also afterwards. So it's not only 8 people that were saved. Other people were also saved. And when we go in Genesis chapter 11, verse 4, when I say it's not mentioned, that's in the Current Classical Bible, because in the Current Classical Bible, they'll say only 8 people were saved. Genesis chapter 11, verse 4. And they said, go to, let us build a great city and tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. So, you have to understand, according to the Current Bible, they'll claim no. According to the narrative, the false narrative, they'll claim that no, the flood happened and the ark stopped on the mountain Ararat, which is in Turkey, which is in Europe. And when we go in Genesis chapter 11, verse 4, you're told, and they say, go, let us build a city and a great tower whose top may reach unto heaven. Let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the earth, of the whole earth. The face, one face. Because in Genesis chapter 6, verse 1, you're told, when men began to multiply on the face of the land, on the face of the land, one face. Because if you have many so-called continents, it's no longer one face, it's no longer one surface, it's no longer one land, Now it's multiple land. You see? Because in the beginning, it was one block. It was one continent, one block, before the other blocks separated from each other. Before, and when they separated, you have to understand that Africa, the mainland, was in the middle and still in the middle. That's the only block that did not move. The other scattered away, you see, because that's what is known as the continental drift. But before that, it was one block. So at the time of the flood, it was one block, it was one continent. So the European continent did not exist. Turkey did not exist. The mountain Ararat did not exist because it was all in one block. So it could not have been in Europe that the ark landed on. You see? Because the mountains, Ararat, and so on, the other continent, the other block, happened way after. It happened when? In Genesis chapter 11, verse 4 in translation Bible de l'Épée, that's a French translation, you're told, and they said, let us build a city and a tower, pyramids, whose summit is in the heavens, and make us a reputation, lest we be scattered on the face of all the earth. So they were trying to build a pyramid that's regarding Babylon, Babel, the Tower of Babel. Genesis chapter 11, verse 8. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there on the surface of all the earth. They stopped building the city. And when we go in Genesis chapter 11, verse 8, in another translation, Bible de l'Épée, you're told, here says Jehovah, but you have to understand those are false names, that falsification after. Nevertheless, it says, and I'll say, and God smashed the whole face of the continent in fragment, the whole face of the continent, because it was one continent that was smashed in fragment. So when it says fragment, it's little fragments, and they ceased to expand their empire. So that's the beginning, the birth of the other block of land when they separated. You see? So that's when the notion of the other seas or other oceans as well. Because in the beginning, it was one ocean. It was one block of land, one big ocean, one language. And after, in Genesis 11, verse 8, that's when the languages appeared, the birth of other languages, the beginning of other languages, the beginning of other land, meaning the drift of the land, so of the fragment of the continent. So the notion now, they will claim the European continent, America, Asia, Oceania, and so on. Those happened way after. That's the beginning here, when they started to drift, you see? And that's when you see the birth of the seas, and other oceans now, you see? So they could not have been a territory named Turkey, which is in Europe, and that's where the Ark of Noah landed, because it did not exist. It wasn't there. It was all in one block. So that very easy to understand. The notion of the drift of the fragment of the continent happened in Genesis 11. So that's the beginning of other block of land, the drift, other languages. Before that, it was one block, one language. And that land was Africa. That block, it was ancestral Africa. The true name is Wasi, one block, before it drifted apart. You see? And it was one language. And there were more than 8 people that were saved, because Noah had brothers and sisters. There were other people who did not partake in the violence, in the sins that were taking place in the time of the flood. Those who were not taking part of those abominations were saved. You see? And even in the current Bibles, you're told regarding the descendant of the Nephilims that were also found. The giants were also found on earth. So that means there were more than 8 people that were saved. And not everyone. And you're also told regarding Melchizedek, who also appeared after the flood. And he was born before the flood. But he was also saved. So you have to understand that the narrative is completely false, is mistaken, because those who have written the Bibles, the current classical Bibles, are limited. They did not know, they're confused. You see? And the fake pastors who are not mandated also preach those lies. And even regarding the map, when they'll try to represent Africa and try to represent other mass of other lands, they'll try to make it look like Africa is small, and you have like Asia, which in some maps they're represented as bigger than Africa. You see, all those to try to trick you, to try to make you believe that no, they may be other land bigger than Africa. No, and they'll try to represent the earth. They'll try to represent no, they went out of the earth, they went into the universe. They try to show images of the earth and so on. Falsification, lies. They'll try to show no, they went into the moon, on the moon, and so on. Complete lies, complete nonsense. So that was the message in the current classical Bibles, that the timeline of Noah's Ark, when they'll claim no, only 8 people were saved, that's completely false. When they'll claim the ark landed on Mountain Ararat, that's completely false, because those mountains did not exist. The Turkey did not exist. Europe did not exist at that time. And that was in the current classical Bibles. But we know that there is one Bible, authentic Bible, Bibèl, the Book of the Truth, the only authentic Bible without any errors or contradictions. So leave all the religions, all the fake pastors, all the fake scientists, stop listening to them, because they'll come up with theories and so on and try to use words to try to make it seem like they're smart when they themselves lack knowledge. Because they'll say they'll talk regarding the Big Bang, regarding the universe and so on. But what was before the Big Bang? They cannot explain. You see, because they're limited. They are limited. It's only theories and supposition. And then later those suppositions become affirmation. You see? Those are claims. False claims. There's only one authentic Bible, one truth. The authentic Bible is Bibèl. The truth is the truth we are receiving from Zula 100. All the other sort of teachings are completely false. So, leave all the religions, follow the message, the only teacher, Zula 100. All glory be to Loba, the only unique creator.